I'm going to ask a quick favour. If you're listening to this, please hit the subscribe button and the follow button. Like, share, rate, review the podcast. It helps more than you realise.
I was going to be a career girl and I was going to be recognised, and people who were going to, it's going to be a different thing for me, but actually just quite soon realised that I am completely unemployable. I'm very happy to be so.
I believe every business owner has a story to tell. Through seeking true, authentic insights about the entrepreneurial journey, I provide a platform for our peers to share their stories and inspire those that listen. This is the County Business Talks podcast, powered by Picture Book Films. Welcome to the next episode of the County Business Talks podcast. So today I'm joined by an award-winning entrepreneur. She worked in the creative industry with the likes of Alexander McQueen, a buyer for Laura Ashley and Warehouse, managing large teams and £40 million budgets. Her company, Three Blonde Bears, that she founded in 2007, won numerous awards, and after winning the Make Awards in 2012 and being selected by Lord Young and Satiri Healy to be a founding member of Enterprise 250, and in 2013 saw Jo being recognised as one of the most creative founders in the UK. Now a full-time artist, she has been on the Landscape Artist TV show and had various commissions with a range of creatives and companies on various projects, from original artworks for feature films, landmark buildings for corporations, single covers for musicians to illustrations for magazines. I'm delighted to welcome a good friend of mine, Jo Myles. How are you, Jo? Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thanks, Sam. That's such a lovely thing for you to say about me. It's when you hear it back like that, you're like, oh, I've actually done some things.
Yeah. You have, for a long time, been a true inspiration for me, and I'm delighted to have you on. Look, we're going to delve straight in.
Yeah.
Just start by telling listeners a little bit about your business journey and yourself.
Sure. So I guess my business journey started. So when I'm considering my business journey, I'm talking about what I've been doing and running on my own. So I guess I first went self-employed back in 2006. I'd been working in the sort of creative industries for such some time. So at Alexander McQueen, I was very much directly working with Lee and creating anything that you saw on the catwalk that was completely bonkers, made out of razors, shells, dog hair, anything like that. That was my job to coordinate it. So it was super creative, but I left that kind of part of that industry because I wanted to be more businessy. I've always had this element of wanting to know how things tick. It's been with me since I've been a child, I think. And I think a lot of that's to do with being brought up with self-employed parents. So I went from there into fashion buying, but again, did that for several years, but it wasn't creative enough. Yeah. And that's where really, sort of back in 2006, where I started to that was the first point where I started to put feelers out of how to be self-employed and how to take my creativity and business acumen into the business world. And that's where it really started for me. So initially it was doing some consultancy work on a buying level and then founding Three Blonde Bears. And that really was the start of this big sort of journey, roller coaster, I would say, of learning how to survive and adapt in a business environment.
Amazing. So you're saying both your parents were self-employed.
Yeah.
So you think that like you've sort of always, from a young age, like you said, always had maybe an entrepreneurial or inquisitive mind about how that would work, and that you'd want to do your own.
Yeah, definitely. I think, really initially when you're younger, you kind of rebel against what your parents do. So I was like, I'm not going to do that because, I was exposed to, they run a multi-million-pound steel business. So they, and they lost that business. It went, into liquidation, and they started up other companies. So I saw that as a kid growing up from birth, I was on this roller coaster with them. So very comfortable, and the exposure that I had with them was really good for my social skills. So I was, they were always having dinner parties, taking us out to events and stuff. So I was really well exposed and sort of, well practiced on that side of things. But actually, I think you kind of rebel against that. And I was going to be a career girl, and I was going to be recognised, and people who were going to, it's going to be a different thing for me, but actually just quite soon realised that I am completely unemployable. I'm very happy to be so. I think that's what a lot of entrepreneurial people say. And I know that you've heard it from, I listened to James Dempster's podcast the other day, and he said the same, but it's a really common denominator with creative entrepreneurs, is that actually we are unemployed, but we're okay with that,
Yeah, I think you're right. Pretty much every episode I've done so far has been similar to that. Like you say, people allude to that fact, I'm got to a point I am just in that stage. I'm just unemployable, and I can't see how. And I've always said, like, for me, you know, you've got kids, I've got kids. I always said that no matter what, if I needed to go out and earn money, I would. And no matter what's happened on the business journey, I think I've had some tough times, and you almost without any income, you go, oh. In the back of my mind, always the thought that if I had to, I'd go and get a job. But believe in myself enough that I can come up with an idea, do something. You know, well, I don't want to go off piece, but I guess I'm sure we'll come to this a little bit later. But like even for you, like during sort of lockdown with the baking artist and things like that, like just I'm gonna generate some money.
Yeah.
I can do this. I'm gonna create that, and I find that incredible. And I guess that's the traits of entrepreneurs. That
Definitely,
yeah.
I think being employed for me is the last step. It's like the absolute last resort, and I would do it if I had to provide for the family, but I'd really have to try my hardest to not get there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm with you. So we've sort of talked a little bit about it, but what I'm keen to look at, like, obviously with a variety of roles you've done, like Alexander McQueen, Laura Ashley, Warehouse, etc. What was it in 2007? What was the catalyst for you to actually go, well, I'm actually going to start my own company now? Like, what was there something that happened then that made you think, or was it just the fact that I've done my time in that area, I just want to go and I'll do my own thing?
Well, if I'm going to be really honest, I had a really bad experience with Warehouse. I moved there when I was at Laura Ashley. The company was going through a series of restructure and redundancies, and I was offered voluntary redundancy, but I was also offered a role within the company which was more senior but for the same money and a lot more responsibility. So I chose voluntary redundancy and went and got a job, which I thought was a good move, but after about a month moving to quite a fast pace. So Laura Ashley's quite a considered brand. It's careful range planning. It's, you know, it's got good values. We work with we did. It's no longer in existence. It worked with really considered factories. We had good relationships. There wasn't any scamming going on. And I went to a fast fashion company where it was kind of the opposite of that. They're very ruthless, very cutthroat. They wanted, you know, 1.5 arms a day. You know, expected to be there from 7 till 9 and the rest. And it wasn't for me. I realised I'd made a mistake within about 2 months. And I fell pregnant with my first son, Finley. And again, as I went over onto maternity leave, I just thought, this is a really perfect opportunity for me to try something new. Because I was going to take a year's maternity leave anyway. So that was really the catalyst for me.
Okay, cool. And to talk to me about Three Blonde Bears and tell listeners a little bit about that and that sort of journey and, you know, number of awards and etc. So just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Three Blonde Bears is named after my 3 children, who I affectionately called the Blonde Bears because they were all blonde. They're teenage now, so there's various different hair colours going on, especially with the daughter. I joined Not on the High Street, which is founded by Holly Tucker and Sophie Cornish, in 2006 under the company name Home, which was a partnership business with my mum. And we were making very high quality home goods, so really sounds really weird, but we made a lot of draft excluders. We were the queens of draft excluders, and we had all this beautiful linen fabrics that I'd had made out in France, and we would have them come in the workshops and made bespoke ones. You wouldn't think that was a thing, but we made a lot of money from it. And as Not on the High Street grew, the opportunity for personalisation came on board with the CMS, a sort of content management system behind the website, was able to allow us to do personalisation. My mum wanted to retire, so I bought her out of the business, and it was an opportunity to rebrand and refresh because I wanted to launch as a personalisation company. Yeah. And so that's really where it started from. You know, it was obvious choice to name it after my children, much to their despair. So we were, you know, top 10 seller in On the High Street for 8 years, I think. Wow. And it grew from there. It was very much a kitchen table business, which soon took over the whole house. I had a purpose-built studio in the garden, which we soon grew out of, and then we ended up in some large premises in Haywards Heath with a whole, you know, we were quite a flexible company, so I'd have a team of 7 permanent employees, but then at Christmas we would grow to sort of 30 people taking on seasonal workers and shrink again and then grow for Mother's Day, Easter, Father's Day. And yeah, it was a real journey. We were the kind of early dot-commers, the second wave of the dot-commers with, very much Holly and Sophie were really pioneers, and we were one of the first partners on board, so we had a whale of a time.
Yeah, I can, because I've listened to actually Holly Tucker's podcast. She's done various ones, but the high performance one I listened to, and it's a fascinating story. I've actually heard her speak before as well, and measured up what they did and grew that, and it must have been exciting to be part of that at that period, like getting on board at probably an early stage with them, and you growing as they sort of grow. And
I was still getting goosebumps for even you saying that, because it was so exciting. I mean, it was flipping exhausting. Yeah. But, if Holly said, right, we're going to do this, we're like, yeah, we're going to do it, Holly. It was like about 30 of us, sort of the top band sellers, who would, work really closely with Not on the High Street, with developing products for their customers, as it were. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I saw growth year on year through 2 recessions and a financial crash. It was very unusual times, but because we were small, because we were adaptive, and because we were offering that really personalised touch, which was new back then, back in the early noughties. No one else, everyone's doing that now. You can get that down Tesco's, do you know what I mean? But back then it was unusual, and because I had a bit of a design heritage behind me as well, it was all about the story, about the kids, about taking photos of me with the kids that we were cooking together. So it was it was really fun. Yeah.
And that's a love part of any brand, I guess, and any business is James Dempsey, you mentioned earlier on the podcast, he would allude to his book because he's an advocate, but everyone's got to have that story, and it's not only their journey but a story behind it, because that if there's something in that story that's authentic and honest and true, that's what people buy into, isn't it? And
I'm a huge believer in storytelling, and I think that goes across everything in life. That's how you connect with people, by sharing your story. And definitely as a brand, and I know James has rebranded it Fox and Bear, yeah. So and there's loads of companies out there. I've got loads of friends who have got small businesses that have really, the name is so important, because you are telling a story. You're inviting people onto your website, into your world, into your Instagram account. And they're there because they want to be. So it's all about that level of engagement that people can connect with. It's so important.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'm keen to actually listen to you talk about the staff. So you had 7 full-time staff, and from your experience, obviously, working at places like Alexander McQueen, or actually managing big teams like that, how different was that to actually running when it's your own business? Was there did you just take the experience from there and go, right, this is quite similar, I can do that? Or because it's your own and it's your own business, you're that bit more passionate about it? Was it different running a team like that compared to bigger teams?
I found it, on a personal level, I found it easier because I wasn't having to answer to somebody. I think, I was never in... I ended up as a senior buyer. That was my last role at warehouse, and I'm always answerable to the head of buying, to the director of fashion, to the the chief exec. And there was always board presentations to get decisions signed off. So I very much embraced not having to do any of that, and we kind of, as a team, we make decisions together. I really embraced the team because they were my customers as well. So a lot of them, my first employee, Lauren, she'd looked after my kid in a creche at the gym, and we just got on well, and I just noticed that she was good at talking to people, so she was a great customer service advocate, so she ended up being my office manager, and actually all the other people that worked for me were customers and said, oh, have you got any jobs going? I really like what you're up to. So it was actually it was very organic staff employment. I mean, the casual staff were different because, some years we had so much trade, I would have phoned up anybody and got them to come and work for me. I was literally dragging in people from the street. It was crazy, Wow. I mean, even my partner Jason was pulled in the first year we were dating and was like, have you got any holiday left from work, Jace? And he's like, come in, and he's like this. He's like, this is mental. I was like, yeah, it's really fun, isn't it? Get on with it.
You're being too slow. Crack on. I love that. Well, and how does that then... That's really interesting, then, that people seeing what you're taking people on, seeing what you're doing and buying into that. Because then I guess, again, I talk about culture a lot on the podcast, and which is something I find fascinating. I think me and you spoke offline about it before. I remember I really struggled at the salon with not being a hairdresser and trying to create a culture within it, getting people to believe in what I was doing. And I guess by you having such a creative background and, you know, leading from the front, but people seeing what you're doing and buying into that, you almost, they're buying into a culture automatically. Or did that sort of grow organically as well, or how was
It was very much an organic thing. I think it's engagement with product initially. So they've bought the product. They know me from around. I mean, all the people I employed were local. They were in my hometown, so which is great. At the, you know, now it's great, but at the time I couldn't go down the town for a coffee without bumping into someone, thinking, "Oh, she was a bit naughty the other day." You know, but yeah, very organic, and ultimately. How did I foster it? I think it was just complete involvement. I realised that the brand, so initially where it started from to where it ended up, was a very different creature. So it started off as sort of something small, exciting, and very creative, and at the end, it was like a big moving ship, a bit like that ship that got stuck in the Suez Canal. That if you get it in one direction, it's really hard to turn it. So it's kind of. It's a tricky thing to manage as you grow, and I think maybe that was the biggest challenge to me, was to try and kind of keep the ethos of the brand whilst growing the business. It's a really difficult thing, and as you go through, you know, the first 3 years really difficult, very exciting, and then you get to a mid period of trade there. Also, that's also it can be quite challenging in terms of having the passion still and knowing where to take it and grow it. Should I grow? Is that the right thing to do? Or actually I need this amount to grow, but I don't want to take investment. How do I do this? So it becomes a different thing, and it was ultimately ended up somewhere where I just wasn't happy with it.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. I mean, just before we move on, because I want to get to that point, I just like we alluded to previously and said about, you know, number of awards that when I was looking on your profile, what can you pinpoint maybe your most successful moment or the greatest achievement with Three Blonde Bears?
Yeah, I mean, there were so many. I think, you know, and that's what I'm able to look, now a bit of time has passed since I dissolved the company, and I'm able to look back at it and go, oh yeah, that was fun, you know, that was great. I think we got listed for 3 consecutive years in the UK Startup 100s as they sort of researched the top 100 companies who were sort of the most creative. They saw that Google was creative disruptors. I didn't really like the word disruptors, so I'm just going to take it as innovators. I'm going to change that for them. But we got just because I didn't like it, you know. Yeah, thank you very much. But we got listed for 3 consecutive years in that list so 2012 through to 14, and that was a really big thing because actually I didn't know those guys. They weren't personal friends. They were looking at the business, the brand, the story, how we communicated. Because again, at the same time, it was the emergence of social media back in sort of 2000. I can't remember when Facebook was, but when I got it was like 2006, 2007. So we were all growing up as adults and businesses, trying to utilise all these things and not knowing if we were getting it right. So to hear from somebody else, you know, a board, we had a really good board of selectors. That was a really big thing for me. And of course, getting the call up by Sir Terry Leahy and Lord, I can't remember his name, Lord Young. He's lovely. It's bad, isn't it?
I've got him in notes there.
Yeah, good. I'm glad you said it earlier. I was like, I was meant to research that this morning. My brain's not as good as it used to be. But that was getting that letter through, and then kind of being told that you're like, in the country there's 250 people who are brilliant at this and you're one of them, and of that there was another 25 of us selected, and we went up to Downing Street and met with them to talk about and it was very much about engagement and employment in your community, which is something I'm so passionate about. It's always been like a thread through my life, is where I live is where I love, and where I love is where I want to support. So that's a really big stream that runs through my life, really.
That's incredible. Okay, so let's move on. So we coming up to sort of obviously 2018. We talked just now about obviously dissolving Three Blonde Bears. So what led to the decision to dissolve that?
So there's 5 or 6 things. Ultimately, the real essence is that I had fallen out of love with it, and I haven't quite figured out exactly when that happened, but it happened a couple of years before then. I think there was an element of saturation in the marketplace. So when I was saying earlier, when we first started the business, we were the pioneers. You know, I was the first person to do a printed personalised mug. Now you can get them anywhere, you know. And also we weren't cheap. You know, we were charging, you know, 18 quid for that, whereas you can get it for £3.49 on Vistaprint now. You know, like it's a really different world out there. And actually, we were finding that in all of our product areas. So our sort of hero products that we're bringing in, our base salary or turnover, were, you know, they were being chipped away at all the time because somebody was coming in cheaper, faster, importing it, you know, and I kind of lost the energy for doing that, and I didn't want to be competing. We'd also got to a point with the business where we had to replace, you know, you kind of had to create a bestseller. Now, for me, all of my bestsellers came from a drunk moment, a brainwave in the shower, a conversation with a friend. But when you sit down at a desk and you've gone, right, there's the Definition mug, which was one of our amazing products. We sold like 45,000 units of it.
Wow.
Sales are dropping off, you know, cumulatively over the years. We need to replace it. And there's a lot of pressure in that moment to do that. And then you're looking at a saturated marketplace. So saturated marketplace, sales are dropping off. I'd fallen out of love with it. And there was one Christmas we had, I think it was 2016. Christmas is so pivotal to gifting. So we will take approximately 75% of our turnover in a 6-week period. And that is very difficult to manage as a business. Anybody that works in retail, and particularly gifting and online delivery, so we're not in charge of, once the product leaves us, we're essentially out of control. We're reliant upon our delivery partners to do the jobs for us. So making the money in that period of time is very important. We had a terrible 2016. And I think we had a terrible 2016 in general, especially after the Brexit vote. A lot of our products were being our sort of substrate products, which is the stuff that's blank, that wasn't necessarily having manufactured. Some of it was manufactured in the UK, some of it was importing. All of our suppliers put the prices up by 30% because of the uncertainty about Brexit. I had a terrible Christmas. I sat down with my accountant again. You know, because we'd just done a big round of investment in equipment the year before, so we didn't have the coffers that we normally have. Okay, well, we'll keep it tight. I made a couple of redundancies of part-timers. And then, so the next big thing is Mother's Day for us. Now, at Mother's Day, I could take enough money in that one event to pay my staff salary for the whole year.
Wow.
I took £2,000 in 2017. And that was the point. I just sat down. We went through the figures on a very, very clinical level because I'd fallen out of love with it. I could do it. And it was very much a cold, hard decision. Right, I'm going to try and save it. I'm going to downsize. So we made all the staff redundant. Gave notice on the premises. Moved it back home to the studio that was in the garden.
Sure.
And that was I'm making that sound easy. So like we had a really difficult landlord, and we had contracts in place that I had to try and get out of, all this stuff that surrounds having a business. And those people that are, we were a really big team. We're still in touch now.
How was that for you? Because I still remember that day of going into the salon. So we had 10 staff at the time, and it wasn't a nice feeling, horrible feeling knowing that I've got to close the business. We haven't got a job anymore. What went through? Like, how did you feel personally then? What went through your mind at that stage? Like,
it was horrible. I ended up having, in all honesty, having a nervous breakdown around that time. It was really difficult. And actually, the girls were brilliant. The team were really understanding. I made sure they were looked after. So I made sure they got all their redundancies, and we talked it through. Some of them found jobs quicker, so we could let them go earlier. But I still gave them their redundancy. I did look after them. It was crap. It was kind of, moving from a big business premises into a small studio in your garden. It's like, and then you don't have that separation. Do you know what I mean? You kind of can't walk out. It was really difficult. It was a difficult time. Yeah.
Sure, but then you do, like, as you do, and we'll go on to obviously the next stage. But you do sort of obviously then sort of bounce back from that. You do you obviously then closed in 2013. I mean, and we talk about around that sort of time, around 2000, obviously with Free Blonde Bears, you sort of then return to your creative roots during, obviously we can talk about lockdown and other bits and pieces, but moving on. But, you know, the art, baking and things like that, talking about them, that period of time, like how do you come out of that? Well, I'm going to have to close that company down and move on to something else.
Well, in actual fact, what happened was, so I made all the staff redundant early 2017, downsized the business, and on the 25th of July 2017, I was having a nervous breakdown. You know, fun times, and you know all the stresses and strains that puts on relationships, family, the whole thing. You know, we suddenly got a massive loss of income because I was a primary earner. And I wasn't well. There were so many things wrong, and I've always been a really, really healthy person. I was powerlifting. I was like, you know, a bit obsessive. You know, like typical kind of entrepreneur kind of thing. But there was loads of niggly things not right. I'd had hypocalcemia, had blood problems. Everything wasn't right, but nothing wasn't bad enough at the same time. So I was going through really hot sweats. We looked into whether that was early menopause, but it wasn't like that. Hypocalcemia means you're super deficient in calcium, which is very unusual. And I was then a lot younger. 4 years ago, I can't think I was 39. I was 39 back then. And just a series of things that weren't right. My gut was playing up. I had this brilliant GP, and she said, "Oh, there's one more thing we're going to test for." And so they ran the tests. And on the 25th of July, I'll never forget it, 2017, I got a phone call telling me I'd been diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, nodular sclerosis. For those of you that don't know what that is, it's a rare type of blood cancer that is triggered by the Epstein-Barr virus. And I'd had glandular fever when I was 18, so it's a residue of that. And that really was a deciding point. So actually, the company ceased trading on that day. So that was, the phone call happened. Jace was actually up at Lord's cricket getting on the jolly. So I hadn't told him because I didn't want to interrupt his day. And I just phoned up all my creditors, all the kind of business partners, relationship, and said, "No, I'm stopped. Just so you know, this has happened and I've stopped." And then started the sort of dissolvation. What's that word? Dissolving process. Yeah, you know what I mean. Yeah. And that was pretty much the deciding factor for me. And then from there, treatment, chemotherapy wasn't fun. And actually, I say art saved me. That's how I got into art again, because I had to do so. I kind of got to, so I had 6 months of chemotherapy, quite intense chemotherapy and steroid pulsing treatment and all sorts of other things. And I came out, I think it was 12th of December that year, I got into remission for the first time. And we got to the new year, I was feeling pretty crap. Yeah. Everyone thinks remission's is something to celebrate, but actually it just means that your cancer's under control. It doesn't mean cured. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of miseducation around cancer and what cancer looks like. Yeah. So I kept people saying, "Oh, that's brilliant, when are you going to be back to normal?" And actually what I was left with, a body that I didn't recognise and a health and energy level that I couldn't cope with, because I'm a high energy person. I'm used to achieving. I'm used to getting out and doing stuff. And I just sort of sat there going, right, what the pecky peck do I do now? Like I don't have the business. I felt like I'd failed with the business for a long time. I felt a massive sense of failure. And I just picked up, there was so every year the Royal Academy have something called the Summer Exhibition, and that year was Grayson Perry curating it, and he'd put a call out, so they put the brief out, and I thought, oh, I'm just going to do that. So I love Grayson. Like, I don't know him, but I'm his best friend. He just doesn't know it yet. Yeah. and I started making, and that was the start. It was a healing process, and it gave me confidence, and that every step took me to meet someone else who introduced me back to this and reminded me I could do that. And that's kind of how it's gone. It's been, again, quite organic, but almost like it's supposed to be. Yeah.
Well, look, thank you, one, for sharing that. But I guess I'm really interested, because that do you feel that, you know, with obviously a couple of things there, but you know, you're going to close your company and you've been diagnosed with cancer. That's like just mind blowing for people. How do you cope with that? But do you feel that because of your mindset and being an entrepreneur and how you have been over the years, and like you said, a doer. I'll get up and I'll do things. That helps maybe with the cancer and trying to get you out of that, like just because ultimately I've known you for a while as a positive person. You know, you've got this positive, amazing energy. Like every time we go to an event together, or I've been out for a drink with you or for dinner, or I leave feeling inspired by you. You're a true inspiration, and I get that positive energy, and that's why I love having conversations with you. And I'm so excited about you coming on, and so I guess I'm just keen to see that period of time. Because it must have been some dark places, it must have felt low, I'm sure, at times, but just being able to get yourself, well, okay, I'm going to get myself out of this, and this is the path.
Well, you know, you can't do it all on your own, is what I would say. And Jason and I have been together for just over 6 years, and he was a massive support for me and the kids. And I live what I call a transparent life, so I'm an open book. So if you don't like that, that's your problem. But this is the way we roll, you know, kind of thing. And I recognise there were moments where I kind of really dark moments where Jay sort of, you know, gently said to me, I think we need to get some help here. So, you know, I did, you know, I went and got, and still have help with mental health, with therapy, stuff like that. And actually I think, you know, and part of me saying the business is closed on the day that I get my cancer diagnosis was me going, that's what I need to focus on. I need to focus on my health, my family, and getting better or getting through this, and not knowing. And actually, you know, now in hindsight, I can look back on that, and actually although it was difficult to close the business, and I definitely did feel a sense of failure, I think I did the right thing, you know, like it was about priorities, isn't it? You know, and there is no greater priority than your own health.
Yeah.
As a mother, you know, if I'm not well, how can I look after my partner, my children, my home? You know, it's kind of a no-brainer. Yeah, the massive dark moments, you know, kind of, but, and there's always a but, and I think that I'm much more balanced. I'm less aggressive now. I'm kind of more considered. I think I'm a little bit more approachable because I've been through that. Because it's kind of your priorities are brought into very sharp focus when you go through something like, you know, with health stuff, particularly business. You know, business is just business. I've always said that. It doesn't define me. I love it, but it's not me. It's business. With cancer stuff, you suddenly learn, and this is really difficult for an entrepreneur to say, that you lose complete control over everything in your life. Okay, so that was the thing, and I kind of had to give in to that. I had to try to fight it for a while, but you have to, that, you know, ultimately that was the biggest learn for me, because you don't know what's going in your body, you don't know what day it's happening, you start to get all these different things happening to you, then things change quickly, and you just have to go with it. And I think, you know, how did I cope with it? I just made friends, and I talked to people, and, you know, and I think knowing people who've been through similar treatments, no two cancer diagnoses are the same. It's the people with that kind of positive attitude that can dedicate the time to the cancer. Go, actually, hello, you know, who are you? You know, what can we do? You know, how can I move forward, and how can I get rid of you? You know, and actually, look at it face on, rather than doing the woe is me and isn't this awful. And I've never, and even now I'm back in cancer treatment at the moment, and I don't make it a big public thing. It's something that I need to do, and I'm mindful of it, but it's not going to stop me.
That's what an amazing story, and like you said, an amazing mindset to be able to have that sort of still that positive, because like you say, some people can't deal with it and deal with it in different ways. And look, I thank you for sharing that, Jay. That's brilliant. I mean, let's move on to the art, because I like you said, that sort of, I guess, in a therapy way, sort of helped you, and you sort of got back into it. And look, you're certainly, when I say I'll speak to you, you're someone that doesn't do things by halves. So I'm going to do some painting in my studio, and then all of a sudden, well, we're on the landscape artist TV show, you're doing commissions and etc. Tell me about it. Where are we with the art and everything?
Oh my God, it's so cool. I just love it. I kind of like, I have to pinch myself daily to be honest with you. I mean, okay, so it doesn't happen overnight. By the way, I'm like year 4 of an artist, and there is a lot of hard work that goes on behind the scenes. Sure. But it's funny now. I feel like I should have really been doing this my whole life, because it's like a complete joy. You know, like, there are other sides to it as well, which I won't, maybe that's a time for another podcast.
Episode 2.
Yeah, episode 2. It's meant to be, like it just feels like a complete extension of my character and personality. Tie that together with the event stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, the baking artist, was very much started because we needed money. I mean, I've always said to Jace and the kids, if we need money, I'll go get it. And very much, typical artist, you start out, you're not making it, you're selling a print for 75 quid a pop or whatever, you're not going to pay the mortgage. Yeah. And so we were a bit skint, and I said to Jace, I'm going to take on a market stall. I told him the night before, because this is, bless him, this is the way it rolls in our house. By the way, tomorrow you're helping me at a market. What? He loves it. You can ask him a different time whether he does actually love it or not. I don't know.
Over a Negroni with him.
Yeah, definitely. And we went and did Cookfield Market, and it was, do you know what, it had potential. I thought, wow, I've just baked for like 2 hours and I've got like 300 quid. Okay, so that solves that mortgage issue or whatever it was that we needed to pay. And yeah, so I kind of, grew and developed that kind of, it's very much the other thing that I do. So it's become part of, and actually what's going to happen going forward is that it's all going to be one thing. That's the way I'm going to sort of package myself. It won't be the baking artist and Jo Myles, it'll just be Jo. That'll what it'll be eventually, because it's really intrinsic part of my creativity. Like you, I love food. I love cooking. I love the joy that it brings to people, and I also think it is a massive art form. Like when I put food on a plate, I want it to look nice. I want people to put food in their mouth and it bring them joy. And actually that's part of my art. So it's kind of, it started off as we needed some money, and now I've got so I do 2 markets a month. I've got Sussex and Cookfield. They both sell out markets for me. I make Lebanese food, which I absolutely love. I've met some brilliant producers on the way. So Mamouche Bakery over in New Haven, I buy a wholesale their pizzas. You've had them, haven't you?
You recommended to me. Yeah. I bought them from you.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, these are great. I've used them in a couple of the sake things that I've bought.
Yeah. Oh my God, just amazing. And so I've met all these amazing small macro producers from doing the markets, and I found this little tribe of people that are really passionate about what they do, and they're amazing. Like Annette from Mamouche makes these pizzas that are like out of this world, and she, I'm lucky enough for her to wholesale them to me so they complement my foods. And on the back of it, Jason and I, we started up a market pre-lockdown in Hayward's Heath, but the old Rona came along and ruined that for us. So we're just about to relaunch our own Hayward's Heath Producers Market on the 16th of October. Amazing. In Hayward's Heath. Amazing. That's definitely, I think that'll be the thing that Jason and I do together. It's kind of passionate about, it brings that community line back in. I love what I do. I love where I live. I love my community. I want to support it. And, that whole food enjoyment thing is just very much part of it. And actually, I got fangirled on one of my markets the other week, which was just like a really a big moment for me. Because this lady came along, was asking about the food, and we got chatting, and I think I had some of the Cookme project, which we'll probably talk about shortly, flyers on my market store. And she said, oh, this is lovely. And she said, oh gosh, it really reminds me, do you watch Landscape Artist? I was like, yeah. yeah. Well, I don't want to go straight in. I was on it,
Have you not seen the episode?
Well, she said there was this. She's looking at me and she says, "Oh, it's really similar to this long, tall piece of art." And I said, "Oh yeah, was it at the reservoir?" She was like, "Yeah." She said, "Did she get through to the final 3?" She went, "Yeah." I said, "That was me, love." And she was like that, and she goes, "Well, can you sign it for me?" She ended up having a really long conversation about it.
I love that.
And then that's happened more often now. So we're kind of, somehow it's all going to end up together. I'm not sure how that's going to happen. I think the market's going to be sort of pivotal in that, I would say. So, but yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
What I love about that, the hustle side of it, they go, you know what, I need to get some money.
Yeah.
What am I going to do? Like, people say to me about the entrepreneurial journey, where did it maybe start? And I always, my parents weren't. They were really hard workers. Taught me a really strong work ethic. Lovely people, but wasn't entrepreneur. Both had jobs. So I never. But I think I always say to people, I think I just watched too much Only Fools and Horses, and that was my thing. And I think not that probably he was the best businessman in the world. Certainly not. Probably why I've done what I've done. Anyway, but yeah, I just and I love the hustle. Like the thought of going, need some money. I'm going to go and get it.
Yeah.
You know, Jace, we're going to go and do a market tomorrow. I'm great at cooking. I'm going to bake something. I'm going to go and sell it. And that for me is real, true entrepreneurship, and just that entrepreneurial spirit. Just going, I haven't got any money. I'm going to go and generate it from. I've got these skills. This is what I can do, and then from it to do that, and obviously I follow you on Instagram and stuff, and the images are amazing. Your food is incredible, and I just love, like you said, this. What really strikes me actually, and what's really great talking to you and going for when I obviously I know a bit about you, but reading up on different bits and pieces you've done, and what's really nice is that sort of creative stuff that you do that you're just genuinely passionate about. So obviously you've done your bachelor's and stuff like that in textiles, so you went into that creative industry, so that was stimulating that, but then going it back into the art where that creative side is, it's just doing things that you're passionate about. And if businesses are built on passion, then it's nothing. Look, you've done it as a way to generate some income to pay a mortgage, but it comes from that passionate side that's only going to grow because of that. I think it's fascinating, and yeah.
It's really important. I think, like you, and like actually Holly Tucker talks about this a lot. You get so many days on this planet as a human, and I certainly don't want to say that I wasted those days doing shit that I didn't like doing. Am I okay to swear?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, you've said that now. I'll try and be polite. But actually, you know what? It's about that kind of, why wouldn't you do what you're passionate about? I mean, I know there's loads of reasons, for people that aren't entrepreneurial listening to this saying, oh, it's very well you saying that, Jo. You don't know any different. Yeah, I do know different because I did do that. But also just remember, you don't have to. You make choices every single day, and actually, like the baking artist is a classic example of that. As I grew that through the lockdown and did food delivery services and all sorts of different ways of making money to get us through that and keep my sanity through lockdown. And the same time, Sky happening, where I was on Sky Landscape as the Artist of the Year, and the minute that went to air, I mean, I sold a lot of paintings, for a lot of money, and actually then there was a juncture where we go, do we need to do that anymore? You've got an art agent now and part of a connected artists club, so there's lots of resource and hard work that goes on.
Yeah, sure.
And we got to a point where we said, well, do you really need to do that? And financially, not really. So why am I doing it? Because I bloody love it. I love doing it. Like you're saying, there's something about selling. And I think this is, comes around to what makes an entrepreneur is actually what the sort of core skills. And actually being able to sell and having interpersonal connections with people that is based on a mutual respect is so important. I really believe that, actually, a lot of my market customers have become friends, as always, and you just don't know who you're talking to. Do you know what I mean? You never know who that person is or what their story is. Stories again comes through, so we've kept it on, and actually my kids come to the market with me, and actually Finley and Dexter are getting really good at all the payment systems. My son Finley, just very recently, and I'm incredibly proud of him, at 15 he's launched his first business. And he's doing, and it's his own idea. It's nothing special, like the market thing. He's washing people's cars. He noticed that all the sort of supermarket car park wash guys have disappeared, for several whatever reasons that is. And so he had some flyers done, put them up the road. Sunday gone, he earned 60 quid. I mean, he's 15. How cool is that? And if that's come from me doing, do you know what, Mum, we needed some money. Mum needed to make some money. She started a market stall. He sees how much people love my work. He comes along and helps me. We have a laugh together. And he's gone on to do that. My job's done as a parent.
You know what, 100%. I talked on a previous podcast, we were talking about about education and kids and stuff like that. And, I think I go over this about the education system is a bit broken in the sense that, you're judged on being tested on one day and blah, blah, blah. But I think for me, unless my kids come to me and go, look, Dad, I want to be a lawyer or I want to be a doctor, so you've got to go to university, that's the path to get there. Of course, I'll support them, whatever they do. But I'd love to think that maybe they see some of the stuff and know that there's a different path. Whatever path they're going to go on is fine, but know that there's a different path. I think when I was younger, I go back to me being at school, that wasn't there. Like, you know, we look at it and go, entrepreneurship wasn't even really a thing back then.
I don't even think it was a word back
No,
then.
I certainly I can't spell it now, back then. But
just about say it, Sam. We'll write this another day.
But I find that, and I honestly, that for me is, it would be almost like a dream for me. I think if the kids come to me and said, like, Dad, I'm going to set this up and do it, I'm like, that would blow my mind. I think, you must.
I'm not allowed to say it, and he's absolutely going to kill me for saying it on here, but I'm very proud of you, Finley. Because he said it the other night, stop saying that, it's embarrassing. And I was like, I'm so proud of you.
So cool.
But it does feel like, and that is from, you know, sharing experience, being transparent, not being too proud either, you know, because, you know, you got to remember that, you know, in these places where I was doing markets, I'd employed half the frigging town, you know, and then all of a sudden I popped up with some falafels and a bit of pita and hummus, and they're like, what's she up to? It's like, well, actually, I need to make some money, you know, like I used to pay your wage, I need to pay my wage, you know, like it's just about not being, you know, to take that sense of shame or whatever it is that you feel and just to say, go, okay, I recognise that that's sitting there. What can I do with that? Is that really important? What's more important? Is it paying the bills? Yeah, the bills are more important. Shall I do this and be grumpy about it, or should I do something that I really love and see if we can have some fun? And I guess that's kind of my preset. Yeah.
Awesome. Let's quickly talk. I want to talk. You mentioned it briefly there as we was going over, and we said we'd come back to it. So the Cook Me a Haven project. Tell me a little bit about that.
Wow, yeah, so that's been a roller coaster in itself. So, how did that happen? So every year there's a festival in Lewes. It's been going for, I'm going to say 27 years. I'll probably get told off because that might not be right. Yeah. But it's Art Wave Festival Lewes, which happens every summer. Started off in Lewes and now it's kind of East Sussex more, but it's centralised in Lewes, but it's rounded about in East Sussex. And 2019 was the year that I first took part in it, which was a piece of art, I had two pieces of art, one of which was the piece of art that got me onto Sky Landscape Artist of the Year. Yeah. So I have like a really sort of strong affection for the festival and was trying to, with the backing of my agent, get more organised. So she was like, what's going on with Art Wave? You need to know. Okay, so I called up Charlotte Parsons, who runs the whole thing. I said, oh, who's doing open calls? What's happening? She didn't have anything initially. A couple more conversations down the line, she offered me something with somebody that I didn't like, and I let her know I didn't like her, and then we became friends. And she thought of me for another project, which is, she introduced me to this couple called Kitty and Michael Ann, who used to run Drusilla's. Oh, okay. Sort of the Ann family have got a long heritage in Sussex, so the whole family pretty, you know, really intrinsically linked with the area, and they've got property down there. And they wanted to do this exhibition. They're not artists. They're not. They'd run events. These guys are in their 80s, by the way. They're, you know, they're really inspirational people. Wow. Hannah so she put me in contact with Kitty and Michael, and I had a conversation with them. And you know, when you just click with someone, you know, I liked what they were doing. They want to raise money to repair the sea defences down at Cookmere Haven. They wanted to put on some kind of art exhibition. They had the location. They'd booked it in, paid the Art Wave fees, but didn't really know how to make it happen. Sure. Had a chat with them a couple of times, and so there's 4 co-founders, there's Wenda, Bradley and Brad, and it's just gone from there. And actually it's been like I didn't really know what to expect with it. I kind of probably should have charged a bit more, sorry guys. But it was it's just been this, again, another amazing thing. It's about being able to put, you know, and that comes back to being able to pick up the phone and have the conversation and be open to things that come to you. And actually we've ended up with this amazing, so it's on at the moment, it's over at Seaford Hill Barns in Seaford. And we created an open call. So for art of, depicting or inspired by Cookmere Haven. We had over 200 artists enter. We had a really punchy panel of judges. Holly Tucker kindly put her head in for that one. We had James Trollope, who's an author and sort of ex-journalist and expert with Eric Slater. So if anyone knows artists, you'd know about Eric Slater, who's a Sussex artist post-war. Gear King of King and McGraw, who is like the world's biggest and finest art repro print printer.
Yeah.
Sorry, Gear. And Dinah Casson, who of Casson and Man, Dinah is the sort of lead selector for the RA for the Royal Academy.
Yeah.
So she, you know, really amazing people. And if I'm really honest, I didn't necessarily. So I knew James and Holly obviously, but I wasn't in contact with Gear or Dina, or even really necessarily knew who they were. So it's been a really big learning curve. So, you know, ended up working really closely with some of these, the kind of most influential people in the art world. You know, those two are really, you know, mega.
Yeah.
And then, you know, liaising with artists, getting the open call in, getting the hang selected, learning how to put on an art exhibition. So I have put on an exhibition before, but it was a really low key thing, but not this kind of over 3 weeks with events surrounding it, sponsors, you know, we've got 75 individual artists, the team, you know, like, so it's a real learning curve, but actually I've done all that stuff before, but just maybe not all together. But it's been a really positive. I mean, you know, the whole thing is to raise money for Cookmahaven SOS, which is a registered charity that's looking to repair the sea defences, and they're a really worthy charity and lovely people. They've got a great chair, Michael Davis he is a professor at Brighton University. There's some really interesting people involved in the whole project. So it's just it's really interesting and it's doing really well. And I think, you know, we had a team call. We did a FaceTime call yesterday just to catch up, because, you know, with anything like this, it's not just it carries on behind the scenes. You're working quite hard all the time to ensure that it's promoted and things are going on. But actually, I said to the founders yesterday, after we chat, so like, are you happy? They're like, yeah, we're really happy. Like, just try and get some sleep, please, guys. But yeah, it's brilliant. It's amazing.
Sounding quite. What taking out what I hear and what I think is fascinating as well is that, and this is something that allude to, but as an entrepreneur, you talk about opportunities. So just because of your mindset and because you're not, well, I've got a job, I work 9 to 5, that's my role, that's what I do. Where you're an entrepreneur, you're involved in various different businesses, various different ideas, but you're always open to opportunity, I guess, is the key. I think that's something that I've never got a closed mind. I always think to myself that, you know, I don't know what's around the corner. There might be an opportunity. I always work. Like, I think the key is have a conversation with someone. Who knows where that's going to go? Like,
yeah, absolutely. And again, it's that kind of the conversation, the story, the shared connection. You know, and you just don't. If you don't pick up that phone and make that phone call and talk to that person about that potential opportunity. I mean, when I phoned Kitty up, I didn't know who the Anne family were. I didn't know what their links were. I didn't know their influence and how far-reaching it was. But we got on, and then we've ended up with a project that's really successful. And, you know, it's not finished. We're not done yet. You know, and hopefully definitely my hope for the project, you know, whether or not I'm involved in the future, that we've created the foundation of something really special and a template that can be replicated year upon year. Of course, I'd love to be involved at various stages, but I'm not going to be there forever. But, you know, and that's where the beauty of having someone like me on board is. I'm really good at stuff like that, having the energy, the sort of awareness and sort of the mindset of being able to tick all those boxes. If you ask me to do it year on year, I'm going to not do it. I just know it doesn't suit my character. But definitely, it's been, you know, it's on the back of pick up the phone, have the conversation, share your story, listen, you know.
Amazing. Right, well, look, we're sort of coming to the end, so just before we do the quick 5 questions, I just want to find out what does the future hold for Jo Myles?
So, what helped? So, I recently was given tenure at Chalk Gallery in Lewes. So, once Cookmahaven, I've got my first hang there at the moment, and once Cookmahaven's sort of wrapped up and I've delivered that project back to the charity, I'll be more focused on that. So, you'll see me popping up in sort of an events PR marketing aspect there. Nice. We're in talks with there's a local charity that you'll know about, Table Talk with Dan Wade. We're looking to put on a Sussex Open either in 2022 or 2023 in conjunction with the Royal Academy of Culinary Arts, which will be food focused arts and drinks festival. So there'll be an open call for inspired by food. And Sussex producers particularly.
Wow.
And we're talking about putting on events where we pair an artist with a chef and they create a dish together. It could be, I think I'm very excited about it.
Yeah. Wow.
And so that's in the talks. So that'll either be, I would imagine it's probably back end of next year or the year after, just as things pan out and watch what's going on in the world. I'm doing quite a lot of research as an artist on a female called Peggy Angus, who post-war female artist, relatively unknown, very, very connected, relatively unknown, but really amazing. So I'm sort of I'm 18 months into that research. So I should imagine, I'm hoping at some point there'll be a retrospective. So if there's anyone listening who's got a local gallery and who wants to do something, please do get in touch. Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's enough to be going on for now. So I've got chalk. I've got my Peggy Angus continuing research. I've got lots of interviews lined up post Cookmere with people there's a few people left that are still alive that we're friends with her. So I'm going to get in there quick, and then we'll switch to Sussex Open, and of course Hayward Heath Producers Market on the third Saturday of each month over in Hayward Heath.
Amazing. And the spinning the plates is obviously, like you said, I guess like I'll do it, and I've actually come to a realisation, especially over the last 18 months, that I'm actually I've got this going on in that business and that business, and you do them things, but actually I've just accepted that's who I am as an individual, and but not in an arrogant, but I quite like that about me. I like the fact that I've got things going on. I don't get bored. And I think and it's lovely to hear from you as well, and a different thing. Like I'm going to do a bit of this, I'll do a bit of that, and still open to opportunities, because something you might have a phone call next week, and you'll probably still go, yeah, I'll squeeze that in as well, and that sounds exciting. I'll go and do that. And it's the freedom that potentially entrepreneurs are able to have, the freedom to be able to go, I'm going to.
Definitely. And for me, it's all about time. And so actually, on the surface, people say to me, I don't know how you do it. Well, the difference is I just do it. When something comes in, I get on with it. But I also have a lot of time for myself, and I only have that because of the way that I've worked my life, And actually, we are really similar in that respect, love for food, multiple businesses. But that's my passion, that I'm not going to apologise for that, just because it may feel, I get a lot of people saying, I don't know how you do it, you make me feel inadequate. Well, that's not my fault, that's your bad. Maybe you look at that yourself, because I'm having a whale of a time.
I love it. Listen, brilliant. I mean, look, we're gonna finish up. We've got the quick fire questions if we can. So, finally, first one. What advice would you give to a young entrepreneur or someone wanting to start their own business?
So there's a motto that I've had my whole life, and the acronym is JFDI. When I was pre-cancer, it was just fucking do it, and now it's just flipping do it, because I've mellowed out a bit. So.
I love it.
But yeah, if you've got something, what's stopping you? Every single business I founded has been completely organic with no investment, so you don't need to have the money, you just need to do it. JFDI, please.
Love that. Last one. Can you give me 3 traits you think a person needs to be a good business person or entrepreneur?
Yeah, so communication is the biggest thing, and that all comes back to the market trader being brought up with self-employed people, but being able to talk to people, pick up the phone, have the conversation, talk to the person in the street. Communicator is like my number one thing that I do. It's all based on any of these connections have come from communicating. Think outside the box. Number 2, just because you can't doesn't mean you shouldn't. There's a lot of just because it hasn't been done before doesn't mean that you can't do it, and there's no one's thought like you have before. So that's a big thing I say to my kids. Just because you can't doesn't mean you shouldn't. So that's my sort of second one. And the third one is sales. Being able to sell stuff, being able to trade. The market stores, again, covers that for me. But before that, I had, history and sales and stuff like that. And, because that's what you're going to use for pitching for stuff, for awards, for investment, networking. You're selling yourself. You need to be confident in knowing what you are and what you're standing for. So I think that's really important.
I think that's a great point, actually, to set up, because no matter what you're doing, you're selling something. I learned it. I remember being, I wasn't a hairdresser, but I owned a hair salon. I remember being at the front of it and being like, well, what where do I pigeonhole? You've got to pigeonhole you. Well, I'm not. Ultimately, I'm selling a service that other people are going to be doing. So I was out networking and telling people to do. See, I'm a salesperson. That is what I do. Then even with thermals, the other thing is, like you said, sales is, and I think you're right. Actually, it's such a key trait to be able to, because you, whether it's a service, a product, whatever it is, you're, like you said, a pitch, something along their line you've got to sell. But Jo, wow, what can I say? Listen, I knew that you'd be just an amazing guest, and I'm so grateful that you agreed to come on. And it's been inspirational, mind blowing. I'm so grateful for you being so open and
My pleasure.
everything. And you've been brilliant, and I think everyone's gonna. There's so many key takeaways in there. I can't wait to listen back to it and take more notes and stuff, because it was brilliant. So listen, Jo Myles, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sam.
Brilliant.